Welcome to our monthly service webinar. Give me a thumbs up, Amanda, if you can see me or hear me. Okay. All right. Well, welcome to our citizens who might be joining in or listening to us on our YouTube page. District 7, we do this monthly with the tribal program just to kind of get information out so citizens can reference about what the different programs do. Thank you all for joining. I think we have one visitor here. We're going to visit with about the Tribal Historic Preservation Office for the Kiowa tribe, and our guest today is Amanda Hill, and just want to welcome her. And these webinars are designed to be a lunch and learn, and we try to set parameters for guests that might be joining in. So a little bit about these webinars. It's just me and Amanda going to be having a conversation about the program, but as citizens listen and then maybe they have a question they'd like to ask, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and it just has a question mark in that box with a little comment. You can go ahead and enter your questions in there, and myself or our office manager, Tara Bigbo, who is recording this session today, will make sure that those questions get screened and asked if appropriate. So thank you all for joining, and thank you, Amanda, for making time for our webinar here today. And start off, I just would like to ask you, give us a introduction of who you are. If you, however you want to do that, talk about what families you represent, where you grew up, and how long you've been in the position.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the invite, Mr. Weathon. My name is Amanda Hill. I am the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Kiowa tribe. I was born and raised in Carnegie, Oklahoma. My mother is Doya Daw. My father is Michael Hill. I come from the Haintaw, Dogamaw, Sepuhudul, Red Teepee. I represent many families. I'm very proud to be Kiowa, very thankful to have been raised here amongst our people, thankful to have been able to be around in certain areas and pick up a few things, along the way. And so that being said, I came into this position last year. And so originally, we came on as an emergency hire so that we could go ahead and establish ourselves with the National Park Service. Previously, in the Kiowa tribe, there have been people that were designated as the TIPO, but they had not followed through with the National Park Agreement and established themselves through that process in order to receive federal funding. So last year, when I came on, that became my first priority, was to, of course, write the agreement with the National Park Service. We got that established, got those passed and reviewed, and signatures. Then became the 220th tribe in the nation to assume the tribal historic preservation duties. So we were very proud of that last year. We were able to finalize that in the fall, just in the time for us to be able to qualify for federal funding this fiscal year. So this year we wrote the grant along with Lahoma Horse through our grants program, assisted us in our application process. So we were able to put forth our application for federal funding through the National Park Service, and that was approved. So this year we are just the first year of federal funding and of it being established as a TIPO office. So we were really proud of those things.
Okay. So
go ahead.
Can you provide us a brief overview of what the Tribal Historic Preservation Office encompasses, and then also why it's so critical for the tribe?
Let's start with why it's so critical. So the Tribal Historic Preservation Office is basically like they like to describe it as an expression of tribal sovereignty. So it's a very crucial piece when it comes down to interactions with a lot of the federal agencies, any of the federal undertakings that are going to be transpiring on our historic properties. So that's one of the reasons why it's so critical. It's giving us, our tribal people, a voice and representation at the table when it comes down to policy and development and the things that affect not only our historic properties, but our cultural resources. So it's very crucial. The TIPO office itself is, so we've assumed several of the duties of the State Historic Preservation Office. And so including in that is, of course, writing a historic preservation plan. That's something that we'll be doing this year and are establishing. And also collecting and forming our cultural registry for our historic and our cultural sites. A lot of the Section 106, the consultations that come through, any federal undertaking that happens on any of our historic lands or properties has to go through tribal consultation. That's basically what Section 106 says. So any of the federal funds that are expended on, like I said, these federal undertakings that are any of development that's happening, all of those projects must have that Section 106 component consultation. So we do the government to government consultations in regards to the Section 106. We have consulted and reviewed this past year with many national parks, state parks, many federal agencies such as BLM, the U.S. Forestry, cities, just all kind of different projects of that nature. The Kiowa tribe, so kind of maybe step back just a little bit and go. So we have in our trust responsibility, we have little 31,000 acres of trust land, an additional around 6,100 acres of KCA lands that are co-managed by the Kiowa, Comanche, and Apache. So those are the trust lands for which we answer. But we also have far-reaching historic ancestral lands. The Kiowa tribe is one of the most nomadic tribes on the continent. So we have around 17 states with known historic presence. Coming from our migration from the British Columbia area and coming on down through what's known as Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, into our present area of the Texas, Oklahoma, this Panhandle area. Included in that migration are also many routes of trading and raiding into various other states and this is a regular activity of ours. So that gives us heavy historic presence in states such as New Mexico, Arizona, just Kansas, Nebraska, all the way up into, like I said, Canada. We had tribal relations, deeply established relations with the Crow, the Sarsi, the many tribes from the north that we continue to visit, during our migration to the south. So all of those places where the Kiowa tribe have been, those are the lands in which we are considered like having that historic presence, that significance, and we are to be consulted on all of the federal undertakings that transpire on those lands. So that being said, this office can receive anywhere from around 500 requests for review. Oftentimes, the majority of them are maybe updates and different, like I said, different projects going on within the federal agencies. We try our best to prioritize as we're building capacity. So prioritizing right now on our areas of our main areas of historic significance, including our cultural sites, any open spaces, lands that are undeveloped, our historic properties, and like I said, our cultural sites. So that gives you a little bit of the work that we're entailed, the duties that we're given. That also the typical offices across the board. I mean, they cover a lot of different other areas. They have a lot of functions. You can look on the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, and they have a whole list of these examples to be given there. But just anywhere from providing technical assistance and when it comes to language programs, when it comes to oftentimes the TIPOs are responsible for the cultural and heritage tourism. Within the tribes, they have they sponsor educational outreach for many children, for tribal members as well. That's something that we have really incorporated this past year. and trying to reach our youth and also bringing them in for interactions with our elders in every aspect or every planning event with those things in mind. Um, and also working and partnering together with these federal agencies to not only cover our federal requirements for tribal consultation, but also partnering together for trying to bring our people into these spaces. That's kind of a goal of my own, my personal goal of my own. Whenever we're in these meetings and we're, consulting with these agencies, and oftentimes, I'm looking around at all of these beautiful places, and I'm thinking, man, I wonder when the last time, our Kiowa people were here. And having those thoughts, it really does kind of fuel a lot of the events that we sponsor and that we work together with and partner with our these federal agencies or state agencies. So this past year, a couple examples of that would be so we partnered together with OETA and the Wichita Wildlife Refuge on some buffalo screenings, brought in AOA, some elders, and also some our students from our Kiowa language classes. Just kind of once again trying to foster that communication between our elders and our youth and that shared histories. We've partnered together with, let's see what else we have. We did a Fisher's Peak Youth Camp this past summer. That was a partnership with the Colorado State Parks, able to bring in 10 Kiowa youth into some of our historic and our ancestral lands, teaching them the values that are necessary to kind of foster that co-stewardship, co-management ideals for our ancestral lands. And a lot of these, our children, our youth had never even seen these places before, never even seen mountains. And, historically, Kiowa, tribal members, we're a mountain people. But being located in Southwest Oklahoma, we don't see very many mountains. So trying to get them and back into those spaces and re reacquainted with that relationship with the land, and like I said, incorporating that back into our culture today been a huge goal of mine. So that was a very successful youth camp. It was so successful, as a matter of fact, that we were asked to present such with the during the Colorado's 2024 outdoor conference. And so after what we had many requests from various state parks in Colorado to do the very same thing in their parks. And included in that was the national park, Rocky Mountain National Park. Next year, they will be doing an intertribal youth camp based upon our camp, our template project this summer. So we were really proud of that. Um,
So you mentioned partnerships, collaborations, with these agencies. Um, Recently, I know we had some interaction with, I think, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Service at Palo Duro Canyon. Would you mind just telling us kind of what the event was? You worked kind of streamlining everything for all the tribes. Could you tell us a little bit about that work and what that partnership with that agency looks like right now?
Definitely. So one of the things that we incorporated into our work plan for this fiscal year was the Red River War time period. 2024 was the 150th anniversary for a lot of our historic battles, which they call the Red River War. And so we went ahead and we partnered together with several partners actually during this time to try to bring to light that history and to sponsor several outreach events to, like I said, share those histories and kind of bring a little awareness to our the Kiowa tribe's influence in that area during that time. So we partnered together at first with the private landowners, the Ramp Ranch. So we did the Battle of Lyman Wagon Train commemoration, and so we did that on September 7th. We were able to, Dr. DuPoint and I were able to be there and work together and during consultations and bring to light our participation during that time. In doing so, we also worked together with the Texas state parks, Palo Duro Canyon being kind of the grand finale of the Red River War. It was, or our last stand, as it's referred to oftentimes. That being such a huge, significant piece of our history, our shared histories, the area Tipo, the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tipo, Max Bear, myself, and the Comanche Tipo, Martina Minthorn, worked together with the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department as well as Texas Tech, working closely with Dr. Jordan from Texas Tech, and we formed a kind of a commemorative weekend. And during this time, we were able to bring in several tribal members, and we, of course, made it open to the public. We were given the whole weekend, the Texas Parks and Wildlife went ahead and held reservations out and had free camping for all of the tribal members. We were able to, we had a memorial gourd dance on the 28th, which was the exact date of the 150th anniversary of that battle. And we were able to do, we had women dancers there performing our scalp and victory dance. We had several participants in our memorial gourd dance throughout the afternoon. During that time period, the area ranchers really surprised me, and they came together and they donated a lot of all of the meat that we served during this weekend. They did a cookout for us that Friday. They donated over almost 300 kidneys. So we went ahead and sponsored a kidney eating contest, which went over quite well. We had about 14 to 15 participants. Um, it was really fun. Everybody got to sample kidneys, and we had enough to serve for dinner. They also donated the meat for the supper meal, which was awesome. But through those consultations and through that event, we were um, we were able to kind of showcase ourselves in a way that really made an impact on the officials that were there. And the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department has requested that we incorporate this into their yearly calendar as an annual event. And so we're working together and seeing what we can do about that. Also, following that event, Warren was the Texas Tribal Consultations. And so the Texas Historical Commission, the Texas Department of Transportation, and various Texas agencies met with all of the tribes that have significance and are consulting in that area for their yearly consultations. And the Kiowa tribe was able to open for their opening ceremonies. So we gave a presentation during that morning, and our area Indian education program from Carnegie Schools brought 4 Kiowa girls down, and they performed sign language for us. That was really beautiful. At the end of that, also at the end of that consultation, during the time of Palo Duro, I was speaking heavily to a lot of the policymakers for Texas Parks and Wildlife Department and telling them about the different things that we used to collect and that all of the cultural resources that are still available to or should still be available to us within the park. And those conversations led to basically kind of looking at a traditional use and harvesting policy. And hopefully within a year or two, that's going to be a template that they're going to be using across all 91 Texas parks and wildlife.
That's really interesting to me because I think there's a lot we can do. Like you said, harvesting that because I'm a hunter. I love to hunt. That's one of my favorite pastimes, and something that we could kind of get back to. And how do we harvest that game and talk about taking care of the environment, taking care of the land that we have a tie to, whether we migrated through that, camped there, or one of our sacred sites. How do we open that up and maybe go back there and have a relationship and bring our young people back there, and like you said, taking them into these different parks, these different locations, having a relationship with our people move through here. I mean, now we can go back there and hunt, maybe harvest an elk or something and bring it back to our people and learn how to use that animal and tan the hide and share that with our people. I think is really interesting to me. So I look forward
That's
to hearing
ex
more about.
that, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's also something that we've been shooting for, I mean, or pushing for in these consultations. Our tribe, unfortunately, does not have a large land base, doesn't have a large reservation. A lot of our tribal members aren't even living on their original family allotments anymore. So hunting and things of that nature are kind of becoming just kind of scarce, I guess, that activity. So trying to encourage those things and also push for like those our rights to our cultural resources within these state parks, these national parks, these U.S. forestry. Um, Along those lines, we've been really successful in partnering with U.S. forestry, especially. This past summer, we partnered together with the Medicine Bow U.S. Forestry, and we're able to um, collaborate and go up and harvest 300 lodgepole pine from Medicine Bow U.S. Forestry. And we were able to bring those down. We had a lottery, gave away sets of teepee poles for 10 family members, and also took care of our Native American church. Um, we happened to bring down enough for an extra set of ceremonial poles, so we also extended that out to our relatives, the Oto, the Native American church. So we were really successful in that harvest, and we had 4 young Kiowa men up there for the first time, and it was just a really beautiful experience. And looking forward to going back next summer and being able to bring those things back down. These are like just an example of like I said, the cultural resources. Your cultural resource could be anything that's utilized, within your culture. So it could be things like song. It could be things like, cottonwood trees. It could be buffalo. All of the things that we use, those are our cultural resources. And a lot of the things that are like a lot of the animals, a lot of like I said, the resources along the ways of plants and medicines that are within these national parks and these state parks, just trying to find a way as far as policy to ensure that we have access to those at all times.
I think it's great, and I appreciate the work you're doing as far as collaboration with these, like the U.S. Forestry Service and other entities, but my next question is really about most recently we had a repatriation. And could you talk about a little bit about your work with repatriation, especially when we talk about the War Shield of St. I Day? Talk a little bit about that experience and
So
what the future holds for it.
this year, NAGPRA received a few updates that basically kind of streamlined the repatriation process for tribes, making it much easier for us to bring our belongings back home. So with those new regulations became a heavy on request for consultations through various museums, institutions, trying to comply with the new NAPR law and updates. So during this time, we've been working together with several museums. Um, Also during this year, there was a regulation change within the U.S. Army, which made at the time St. Thaide's War Shield was at the time housed at Lawton in the Fort Sill Museum. And that had been arranged with a lot of consultation through Betty Washburn, different tribal members and descendants that had worked really hard to try to keep the shield in Oklahoma in Kiowa country. It was in possession legally belonging to the Phoebe Hearst Museum out of UC Berkeley. So they did a lot of work to bring that from California to keep it here amongst our Kiowa people. And that loan lasted between UC Berkeley and the U.S. Army for over 20 years. But like I said, with the new regulations changing within their internal policy, that loan was no longer legal. So the shield was going to need to be removed from Fort Sill. At that time, Fort Sill had reached out to the Kiowa tribe and had also reached out to Berkeley. They had reached out to all of the lineal descents that they had. They were just trying to figure out what they could do to keep the shield in Oklahoma without having to have it go back to Berkeley. So that's how we got involved in the conversations. Being able to put forth a repatriation claim, being encouraged to do so by our administration and by our elders at the time, so that the shield would not have to leave Oklahoma once again. Worked closely with Alex Lucas from Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and was able to put forth our repatriation claim, which went through their review, went through national review, and was passed after the 30-day um, posting period, which was like I think October 13th. So we did the transfer papers and everything was finalized last week. And the shield will remain at the Oklahoma Historical Commission Museum Center, excuse me. There's very few places in Oklahoma that have the capacity for those for that an object of that significance. And the repository there, we're able to, like I said, work together with the duty of care, and we'll be able to house it there for us until we have our own facility. And we're able to bring those things back to the Kiowa tribe.
And do you know if there is a plan to talk about a building a facility? Is
Oh
there,
yes,
go ahead, talk about that.
the Chairman Spotted Bird has a plan in mind for Indian City, and including in that is a repository and a cultural center. Also, Ms. Lahoma Horse and our grants department are looking for funding right now to see what we can do to also increase our capacity at the Kiowa Museum here in Carnegie, Oklahoma. So they're looking at different options and being able to, like I said, have that capacity to be able to bring our belongings home that we are working through. That's one of the big repatriations that we were able to solidify. During that time, also, we repatriated Chief Tohasen's calendar from UC Berkeley. So those things are like, they're legally ours, but they're in the care of UC Berkeley until we have that ability to bring them home and properly care for them.
That's excellent. I think that's really great, that, would you talk about like, so in this work with repatriation, there are things that we do want back. And what are some things, you're hearing, or maybe as you do this work, what are some things we kind of want to not want back, I guess, for lack of a better term, if that makes sense. Is
There's
I mean, as you do this work, there's some things that we need to leave there, do you find yourself going through that process?
well, this is repatriation is a very delicate subject and something that I have been seeking guidance and input from our elders. And as we go, I'm going to continue to do so, trying to formulate our process for such and the priority for what to repatriate. As far as artifacts, our cultural artifacts of heavy significance, of course, have higher priority. Um, but there's other there's other things involved with repatriation that we have to address as a Kiowa tribe. Things along the lines of like human repatriation, our ancestors, our funerary objects, those things that are sitting on our on shelves, that have been disrupted. A lot of tribes, I know, I've been receiving a lot of questions and a lot of inquiries about, like, for instance, the Carlisle, our children at Carlisle Indian School. A lot of those repatriations have been very public lately. So a lot of the tribal members have been asking, we do have two Kiowa tribal members that are buried at Carlisle, and we are addressing those and trying to, like I said, gather that input and that guidance from our tribal elders today to see. Traditionally, repatriation of human remains of our ancestors is almost taboo. There's kind of there's different feelings on whether or not we should do this or we shouldn't as a tribe. So trying to gather up, like I said, that consensus and to see how best to move forward as a Kiowa tribe. So that being said, if we are to repatriate human remains, there's things that we'll need to work with, and then we'll be working closely with the legislators on when it comes down to like designation of areas and things of that nature, ordinance, like our processes for such. So as we develop those things, we're having these conversations and we are looking at like the need for it. We just haven't come to agreement on what that is.
Sure, sure. So could you, I know last year I was able to attend the commemoration at Fort Marion, last year, and I thought it was a very it was a good event for me, just be there and kind of acknowledge, where our ancestors, our old chiefs and warriors were sent to, kind of just experience that place. Would you tell us a little bit about that event and the current event coming up with them coming to the Kiowa tribe in November?
Yes, so the Fort Marion event, the Fort Marion project is a project that was started by Noreen Starr, a member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes, and that we came in together with her last year and were able to participate in last year's event at Fort Marion. So we were last year we like I said we came on down. We were able to share a little bit of ourselves in the Kiowa tribe with the national park and the employees there that share those stories. One of the things that we initiated these consultations for and this project was because Fort Marion is, well, it's no longer called Fort Marion. It's the Castillo de San Marcos. But they, whenever you go to the national park, when you at the site, there was very little signage, there was very little anything in regards to our history there, our time period there. Not just the Kiowas and the Cheyenne and Arapaho and Comanche and Caddo at that time, but none from the Apache or the Seminole during their imprisonment at this. So that began the conversations and the consultations, trying to talk about these stories and have that history being shared publicly at the site. Last year, working with Noreen, we were able to go in and have there was many panels we sat on there. There's just basically just kind of an outreach and educational experiences for the employees that share our stories there. We did a scalp and victory dance. We participated in, a lot of the sharings of our ledger art and the things that come from this time period. Also, really important during this is the boarding school component, the boarding school doctrine that came from our time with the Captain Pratt at Fort Marion. So a lot of people don't put those connections together. Boarding school and boarding school doctrine, every child matters, all of those things are heavy and media and the public, but a lot of people don't understand the influence that our warriors and our chiefs had during their imprisonment at Fort Marion. During that time period, Captain Pratt basically formulated his education assimilation and put it to practice on these prisoners, cutting their hair, putting them in uniform, forcing them to speak English, forcing them to learn, so just using that education assimilation, formulate those processes and moving on from Fort Marion to Carlisle and forming Carlisle Indian School and the boarding school doctrine that spread across the nation. So we were able to use that event to kind of bring those connections together and share that with the public. This year, we're bringing all of the staff from the National Park Service that are from Fort Marion, bringing them to Oklahoma. And this event is being sponsored by the Cheyenne and Arapaho, and we are working together also because of our shared time there. So they're being inclusive and giving us our time for representation. So it will be a 3-day event. The first day being at the Battle of Washita site, the second day being at Darlington Chapel in Concho, Oklahoma, and the third day being at the Western Cowboy and Heritage Hall of Fame. Um, they'll be doing basically kind of talking along the same lines, doing the connections with the ledger art, the ledger images that came from this time period, and also the boarding school pieces, and kind of talking to the descendants of the tribal descendants that are going to be willing to share those family stories that are still active. And also during this time, we'll be acknowledging the Kiowa tribe will be acknowledging another repatriation. We have two ledger art or ledger sketchbooks, excuse me, being returned to us from the Missouri Historical Commission. One, there are 46 images total. One is from an unknown artist from Fort Sill, and the other is from Wolha, who is a prisoner at Fort Marion. So we're going to take time during that agenda to kind of acknowledge that repatriation of those pieces and also do a viewing there at the museum.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I look forward to, how it goes with them coming out here to Florida because I thought it was pretty interesting. I think one comment I took from the trip was, as a tribe, we want to ensure we're telling the story, our story, of our prisoners that went out there, our citizens, our relatives that were out there. And a lot of times I think these national park agencies want to be the say so, and I think we kind of we said we need to be consulted. We need to be telling that story because it's a part of our identity as a tribe, our history as a tribe, and so I appreciate that work and consulting and making sure that it's told in a respectful manner. So fully
That's
support
what,
you in that work. Go ahead.
no, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's one of the things that's one thing that's a kind of a general question that they'll ask at these consultations is how do we better share your story? And I'm always reply with what makes you think you need to tell it? Like we are still here. So there are ways, like I said, that we can interact and still be able to share our story and our histories through these platforms, through these spaces.
So I have another question here. What are the biggest challenges that you face in this role with tribal historic preservation?
Being patient with myself. We are, I have to remind myself on a regular basis that we are establishing our program. A lot of programs, they get a year or two of planning and all of these things before they actually have to implement. We hit the ground running this year. So I have to reel it back sometimes and to remember where we're at. We are still establishing our program. We are nowhere near full capacity for review, for survey, for the things that and trying to prioritize. That's very difficult for me whenever it's all priority. They're all important. They're whether it be this agency, this time, this what be in front of me, they're all important. So how do you prioritize? That and being in one place at one time is really hard whenever there's multiple requests, at that time period for us to be represented and have those, have that say at the table, picking and not having the capacity to just answer to them all. That's the hardest part of that overwhelming feeling right now. And being patient, trying to, like I said, understand that we're gonna get there. We're just barely starting out. There's a lot of tribes that have been had their typical offices, established for, decades. And it's hard not to get a little jealous whenever you can see where all they're at and what they're doing. But it's goals. It's a lot of networking and a lot of sharing and looking at the examples that are out there and able to bring those things back to our people and have those resources available to us as well.
Um, so part of our job as legislators is really to assess needs. So is there anything like we can do as legislators? I mean, when we talk, it could be something as talking about budgeting, bringing on more people, supplying more resources. What do you see as a need in this next fiscal year that we may need to address with our historic preservation office?
Yes, I think that would be the first start right there would be the building from budget wise, building for capacity, adding on personnel, excuse me, and just that in general.
About how many people do you think we would need to kind of meet the demand right now.
like 100.
100 people, is that the requests are that many? Then I guess.
There, but I mean, the requests for review are overwhelming. Yes, they're very intensive. But being able to properly service our Kiowa people, I mean, it just all hands on deck just feels like the necessary request to make.
I even have felt a little bit, trying to help out in those requests, and I see it, and I think we have to figure out how do we build that capacity over time and support your initiatives. Because you also have initiatives in the community you want to see. So let's talk a little bit about how do you want to see the community engaged in this tribal historic preservation work for future?
Definitely want. We've had a lot of engagement, and I've been very, very proud of our Kiowa people and the support that we've been given. We have my office is always open. I just like to encourage, all of our tribal members to, especially our elders, if there's anything that they would like to share, if there's family stories, there's things out there that they want to make sure that are prioritized, like any of those things, like, feel free to call the complex to come into my office and to visit. I'm always willing to hear those and to take that guidance as we go. Our youth are very much interested in looking for opportunities. So this past year, we did a several cultural events, including a brain tanning. So we brain tanned several deer hides. So during the fall of last year, I located a area meat locker that was able to save a lot of the hides like from the deer that they were processing. And I have a few from hunters as yourself that donated, to the cause, and we were able to build 4 frames here at the tribe. Our maintenance department helped me get 4 frames built up for skinning, and we were able to bring in a lot of youth and to get hands on with that. Even our Kiowa princess was involved and had her hands in, skinning her own hide. I'd like to see more of that, the hands-on, the learning, the interaction. And it's not oftentimes, even at the end, that's a good example to use. At the end of that event, we're sitting around and we're laughing. Of course, we're dirty, we're tired. It's hard work. We've been here all day together. But to listen to the girls and the women folk as they're interacting and the laughing and the sharing that happens during these times, these are so crucial for our people. That's how we reinforce those bonds, those tribal bonds. That's whenever there's a lot of the oral histories, the traditions are shared. It's just hands on. That's how our learning has happened, for thousands of years before us. So it comes quite naturally when you're in the setting. So just trying to provide those settings for our tribal members and those events in which they can come and learn and interact in that way. I'd like to see more of that. Also, when it comes to incorporating those values into letting them understand what pieces of our like the historic preservation and our being able to be interactive with our families. There's a lot of like family cemeteries that I want to make sure that we have documented. There's a lot of things out there on family lands that I might not be aware of, and maybe those things could be had in conversation and shared here, so that I'm able to put those in our registry and able to incorporate those in the consultations in those review requests. If I don't know it's there, then I can't work to protect it.
So I'll have one final question, and for the guests, we have a couple of guests that have joined us, and we really appreciate that. If they have any questions, I'm going to leave some time here at the end, just to kind of have a little question answer. There's a Q&A box at the bottom. It's got a question mark. If you want to, for any of our guests that might have a question, they want to input their question into that box, we'll get it asked. So my final question here is looking ahead. What are your hopes for the future of our Kiowa Tribal Historic Preservation Department? And, what are some initiatives that you want to see in coming years?
I'd like to see us at the capacity to have all of our land surveyed, have all of those things into a database of our own. I am working with several programs, tribal programs, to have those internal have that data shared when it comes down to like our our coverage areas and where we are, where we've been, like having those things known amongst our people and sharing not just with the tribal members, but our programs as well. Just being able to continue to share and to educate and to keep our Kiowa values and our preservation needs in mind, like trying to foster that in our youth as well, to have those ones that are up and coming to take these and to take notice now, to start, forming not only, the education that goes along with these things, but also having those interactions with their elders and picking up our traditional knowledge as they go and just supporting those things so that we can have them for the future.
Okay. Well, we'll give our guest a little bit more time. I haven't received any questions yet, but you what what is a strategy to kind of gain like that kind of information? How do we prioritize our work
One of
using community development? Is there any kind of strategy you kind of share with us?
Well, one of the things that I'm right now that we're utilizing, so we're involved in several big energy projects that are requiring extensive surveys. So we're working together with Grid United and several of the northern tribes on like the White Tie project. So this is a 150-mile survey area throughout southwest or southeast Wyoming. So we have um, tribal members out in the field utilized for tribal surveyors, basically, is what the tribal cultural specialists. So we put them in the field, and they work alongside the archaeologists and the different professionals as they are conducting this survey, keeping an eye out for Kiowa cultural resources, anything of our people, and that and being able to report back to our office of those things which they find. I find like my goal is going to be in this next year is to kind of bringing in more of our tribal cultural specialists for those surveying efforts, being able to build that capacity, put our people to work in these areas, as surveyors, and also just to get him, like I said, into the field, get him into this area, bringing them in and that interest, those ones that are interested in trying to foster that, like just for the future, not just for the program needs for right now, but also just thinking ahead and starting to kind of get Kiowa tribal members interested in that preservation effort.
Yeah, because I think I, we kind of started out this conversation today with why is cultural historic preserve or tribal historic preservation important, and I think it's important when it comes down to identity. Um, we have an identity that's Kiowa,
Oh,
and
definitely.
that is a big part of our sovereignty. Is if we lose that identity, meaning we are unable to really identify ourselves as Kiowa, meaning are we using our language? Do we know our history, where we came from, creation story, values? You mentioned values. We lose that center. I think it kind of degrades the argument that we're different from your average American each day because we have a different language. We have a different worldview of how we see um, our relationship with the earth and each other. And there's a lot of things that are tied into that. And I think one of these days, my own personal opinion, not to get too political, but I think that one of these days in the future, and this election, is so critical. I mean, um, will the United States government reevaluate their Indian policy? And they could be done with tribes with a stroke of a pen, plenary power. They don't have to acknowledge their treaty rights, and they haven't in the past. So I think there's a fine line there. Yeah, we want to preserve our identity because that's a big argument in terms of sovereignty. Because you can't be a nation without people, right? And what
Oh,
do those
yeah.
people look like, and who are they? I think it's a good question. just an observation on my part, when we talk about identity, I think tribal preservation is important to that. I don't want to, I'll say maintenance right now because I think we need to build capacity for advancing that, into the future, maintaining what we have, preserving what we have, but also being able to grow that and have youth kind of engage with that identity. It's important. Well, I haven't had any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Me and Amanda have been talking for about 50 minutes. So Amanda, we try to keep these webinars about an hour long. And then once we get it all done, we'll publish it to our YouTube page. But I'll stay on here a couple minutes and just, if there's anything you can think of that you might want to put out. If you have any events coming up, you can make some announcements and maybe we'll have a couple more questions from our visitors who are listening in. I know that I don't have any events coming up other than we have our language class. We do an online language class, a beginning Kiowa class, and I see some of our visitors have joined in on those classes just to kind of we're doing just introductory adult learning, meaning we're not focused on a whole lot of writing, but pronunciation and writing helps, but kind of just greeting each other is what we've been working on. That's coming up next Monday at 6. So if anybody wants to join, put an invitation out.
I will also, I forgot to include that we're picking up, we were approved for a bison donation from the National Park Service. So we'll be picking up 2 yearling buffalo from the Wichita Wildlife Refuge on November 4th. And we'll be transporting them to our corral, our grounds at Indian City. There we'll be keeping them for a couple of weeks to sweeten them up on some corn and to get ready for tribal butchering. So that will be coming up in November. I don't have a date set just as of yet for the actual butchering, but I will go ahead and put that out as soon as we get it finalized.
Okay. Well, awesome. Yeah. Let us know so we can put that information out.
We
How
were
many
able
buffalo,
to,
how many buffalo do we have right now? Do you know?
we don't have any buffalo, the Kiowa tribe. They're buffalo on Indian City, but I'm told that those are being that's a grazing lease.
Oh, so those aren't our buffalo, it's just a
Those
great.
aren't our buffalo, no.
Okay. I'm glad I asked that because I was
You
like,
gonna
well,
take one down?
when do we get buffalo back? I saw them at the buffalo paddock and I was wondering if those were the tribes. So I'm glad I asked that. You gave me an answer. And so we'll be getting two. Those will be ours, but
Two,
they're
but these will be
butchered.
for yeah, these will be for traditional butchering. I know the chairman has plans for a tribal herd. I'm not quite sure where we are on that, but these two requests were put forward for traditional butchering. So we'll be doing processing them by hand on site. The hides will be utilized for a big drum, and then we'll gonna try to process whatever we can on site and share. There's a lot of traditional dishes that we just can't make anymore without butchering, like boat, for instance. A lot of tribal members used to go to these, like the Fort Cobb Meat Locker or these area places and go in with their buckets and be able to, get the insides. But USDA and regulations changed, so we're not able to do those anymore. Nothing comes out unless it's processed. And
Mm.
tribals, they don't like that. They say it takes all the flavor out.
Hey,
So
I got you. So we have to do it ourselves in order
we
to
have to do
get
it ourselves.
both. We got
Yeah.
to do it ourselves. I got
We
you.
were able to participate with the buffalo butchering, with the partnership with the Intertribal Agricultural Council and a Kiowa elder by the name of Chester Horse, in the springtime up in Shawnee. And that was a really beautiful experience. So trying to get, like I said, not only those dishes, but also just those skills being, practiced and to be shared and taught. We have these opportunities not only when it comes to our own buffalo herd that we'll be, receiving and building, but also I've had opportunities presented from like Caprock, and different state parks to where we can come in and harvest and take care of traditional butchering as well. So just kind of trying to get our people practiced and that.
Well, one thing I would like to talk to you about is, how often can we get a buffalo from the Wichitas? Because I know, I'll just tell you, I want to see how we get one and get it, maybe, how much it would be to get it, processed. Maybe we do it traditionally if we want the boat and want the kidneys and everything, but, I pledged meat for, next year's Tokonga. So I got to figure out where I'm going to get that from. And it would be cool to have a buffalo again. I know we had buffalo that one year, but I didn't like it. I don't know how many times this buffalo was shot because there was lead in it. As
Ooh,
there was a lot of lead in it, I thought, and I was
yeah.
like, that's not good for our teeth or our stomachs. But maybe I'd
Pardon.
like to discuss more with you on, how if we could get a buffalo for next year's, and I pay for the butchering or the processing of it, that might be something to kind of just talk about for next year.
Way to drop that at 12:56 in
Yeah, I
it.
know. Okay. Well, I don't have any other questions, but I appreciate your time today. And, if there's for those people that are listening in who, might maybe not have heard the whole conversation, you can go to our District 7 page on YouTube. Just go to your YouTube channel and type in Kiowa Tribe District 7. We have our language classes on there. We have our service webinars, our meetings that we have. We try to post those on there just to kind of keep our people informed about different programs. So I really appreciate your time, Amanda, informing us about your work as the Tribal Historic Preservation Office and documenting some of the needs we need to be informed of as legislators when it comes budget time or law time. I'm always willing to listen and hear about things that you might want to. So an ordinance, for example, or whatever how can we help you in that process to kind of establish some protocols and procedures for the future? I'm here for that. So, anything to say in closing, Amanda, before we close this out?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you once again for the invite and for everyone's patience. And I'm never really good in the interviews, but I can talk your ear off and face to face. So any of our tribal members or elders that have any questions, they have any concerns, they have, like I said, just want to ask questions or just want to, want to know more about something, feel free. Anytime you see me in public, you can ask those questions, and my door is always open here at work. And
For people that might have be listening in, like how do they contact you? What's the best way to
the
contact
best way is just to call the 580-654-6300, and the receptionist will transfer me,
you?
regardless of whether I'm in. I do a lot of traveling because of the nature of the work. So if I'm not in the office, she'll be able to transfer to my cell phone.
Okay, it'll transfer to your cell phone. Okay. And do you have an email you'd like to put out there?
Yes, the thpo@kiowatribe.org.
thpo@kiowatribe.org. Okay. All righty. Well, thank you for your
Thank
time,
you.
and you have a great rest of your day. And thank you all to our tribal citizens from District 7. We have about 4 attend, so keep on coming back. We're going to do this monthly with another program for next month. So you all have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll talk to you next month. Thanks, Amanda.
Bye.